Hello and welcome everyone to chapter number 7 from NCERT CBSE Biology. So today's chapter is Conservation of Plants and Animals. In today's chapter we are going to learn about the nature, about the animals, the flora, the fauna. So let's understand or start with the chapter for the conservation of plants and animals. When we talk about this chapter, the first thing that we want to understand, what is conservation? So let's see what is conservation. It is the protecting of plants and animal species and their habitats as part of the world's ecosystem. Wildlife provides balance and stability to the nature's processes. So we can understand that in order to protect or conserve the plants and animals, the flora and fauna of our ecosystem, it is immensely necessary that we protect the habitat also, because they cannot be living when we are removing the place or the habitat or the environment they live in. Like we human beings need a place, need a home to live in. For animals, may it be wild or may it be domestic. Here mostly we'll be talking about the wild animals, the flora and the fauna. So they also need a particular habitat in order to stay. So it is not only conserving the animals and the plants, but also their exact habitat in which they want to live in. Now, why is this conservation so important? Why is it that it has been included as a chapter in the class 8 NCERT CBSE Biology? Because in daily times we get to see the animals are going extinct. Animals are not there. There has been immense policies, immense laws have been made in order to protect the animals. So in order to maintain these animals or maintain the fauna of our ecosystem, because it is very necessary in order to maintain a balance, so we have to conserve the flora and the fauna. So let's see why is conservation important. In recent times, forest lands have been diversified for various purposes, like that of industrialization, roads, irrigation, projects, buildings, everything. And India has diverted around 1.5 million hectares of forest land for development, and majority loss occurred since the year 2000. So every year we are seeing loss of land for the development or for the urbanization purposes. So this has led to the dwindling of the forest life or the forest animals or the wild animals. So plants and wildlife conservation to ensure the survival of the species has become very, very important. It is not only the law enforcement officers or the lawmakers has to take care of it, as we normal human beings also have to ensure that these particular things are preserved, because they are for part of our ecosystem. Without them, even our life will get disturbed. Now let's see the causes of this deforestation. Because causes of deforestation, I told you, because there has been so much of removal of forest because of urbanization, which has led to the dwindling of the wild animals. Now what has led to the process of urbanization or cutting off of trees? The causes of deforestation can be overpopulation demands, that is the demands for the people, those who are there in the cities, that is their homes, industry, irrigation, roads, bridges, flyovers, etc. For everything, land is being used and land is being cleared off of trees. Second is the logging, that is cutting off trees, timber production for lots of wood, for agricultural expansion, for food purposes, for feeding the population, forest fire, mining, all has led to the dwindling of the forest or lessening of the forest or cutting down of trees. Now what has this effect brought on to us? The greenhouse effect, that is the rise in the temperature, soil erosion, because trees are cut, so soils have become loose and they actually get eroded off by the running water or wind. Affects the ozone layer. The ozone is getting polluted and holes are forming, which allows the greenhouse gases to pass through. Acidic ocean affects wildlife, and it also leads to drought, because trees are the main thing which helps in bringing us rainfall. So deforestation is not only the cause, or we are the cause of deforestation. Human beings are not only the cause, even nature also brings about deforestation. Now let's see what are the causes that we bring about and what are the natural causes. So the causes that we bring about is for the forming of the rainforest, farming in the rainforest, road building, logging, mineral extraction, population growth and settlements, and energy development. More so what I have told you in my previous slide, that is all the methods, all the reasons of deforestation. Now by nature, it is mostly so soil erosion, drought, forest fire have all led to more of deforestation. What are the effects of deforestation, which we have already told you in my previous slide. In my last slide I have told you the effects. Now let's again see the effects of deforestation. So effects of deforestation is global warming. I told you, because of the cutting down of the trees, lots of the temperature on the earth is rising, and this has led to the effect of the global warming. Desertification, that is deserts are being formed due to cutting down of trees, and changes in the rainfall pattern, which has led to the floods and the droughts, and finally the soil erosion, which I've already told you about. So all these are the effects, and these are actually, you think about it, these are very, very adverse effects on nature, or which have created or which have been created by man in some or the other kind. So we have to think of ways and means and measures in order to bring them back, in order to reforest them, in order to bring back the forest, bring back the wild animals, or whatever we have lost is fine, or whatever is there we have to preserve them, in order that there is no further degradation of the forest and the flora and the fauna of the habitat or ecosystem. So when we talk of the word conservation, we first think what is to be conserved. So what is to be conserved? It is the diverse organisms, or the diversity of the biological organisms that need to be conserved. So the first thing that we think of is biodiversity. It is the diversification of the biological organisms that is present in nature, and irrelevant and the relationships with the environment. It includes variety of plants, animals and microorganisms. So it includes everything that is living. Everything that is living includes or comes under biodiversity. So in order to maintain the plant and animal life balance, different biodiversity conservation techniques have been formed. So this is the first step that has been taken in order for conservation of the plants and animals, that is the flora and the fauna. So in order to maintain the plant and animal life balance, different biodiversity conservation techniques have been followed. So the first is the Biosphere Reserve, the National Park, the Wildlife Sanctuary and the Tiger Reserve. The last, when we talk or tell, that is the Tiger Reserve, we can understand that this has specially been created in order to protect the tigers. These tigers are a very important part of the Indian subcontinent, and because of its dwindling numbers, our Indian government have actually made or prepared a tiger reserve program in order to protect the tigers in the year late back in the year 1973. So let's study or let's learn each of them separately and a little bit in detail. First is Biosphere Reserve. So what is a Biosphere Reserve? So they are the protected areas meant for the conservation of plants and animals. They also restores the traditional tribal living in the vicinity. So what it does, it protects the particular conservation of plants and animals. So first thing is conservation of plants and animals. Not only that, around that or near about that, whichever tribal population or tribal village is there, even that is also protected, and it conserves the biodiversity of that area. That particular biodiversity of the particular area is totally restored or totally maintained. It is maintained by law. It is not that it is done by any particular person, but by law it has been enforced in order to maintain the biodiversity of a particular place. And there are 18 biosphere reserves in India established by the government. So these are all under the government rulings that it formed, and it has been maintained or looked after by the government officials. So first thing, that is conservation of the animals and plants. Even in the local vicinity, the tribal people, the tribal populations which is there, even they are also restored or they are also conserved in order that they should not, their population should be remaining or they should not become extinct. So Biosphere Reserve, when we talk, it's a huge area and it consists of 3 main zones. So what are the zones? First is the core zone. It is the interior part of the biosphere, interior most part of the Biosphere Reserve, and in this area human intervention is strictly prohibited. No humans or no outsiders, visitors are allowed into this core area of the Biosphere Reserve. This is called the core area, the innermost part of the Biosphere Reserve. Next is the buffer, that is the area surrounding the core area, and here are research, only for the research or any education activities are permitted, and that too it has to be taken, proper permission has to be taken from the government officials in order to move into this buffer zone, because only after proper reasonings they are allowed to go into that buffer zone. And finally is the manipulation. It is the peripheral area of the Biosphere Reserve where human activities like cropping, recreation, forestry, settlement, everything is permitted. So this is the outermost area, and here mostly people are allowed to do their agricultural farming like cropping, even recreation. They are allowed to visit, they are allowed to see, and even people can come and stay in that particular settlement. So this is the 3 forms. Particularly the core area is totally strictly prohibited from the human beings, and the second is the buffer, which people can go but only with proper permissions, and the third is the manipulation area where people can practice, people can take the animals for grazing, people can practice their farming, people can come and settle, but till that area they are not allowed beyond that area. So all these 3 zones constitute the Biosphere Reserve. Now let's talk of a Biosphere Reserve, that is the Panchmari Biosphere Reserve in Madhya Pradesh. Comprises of the 3 protection sites, the Bori Sanctuary, the Satpura National Park, and the Panchmari Sanctuary, which is also known as the Satpura Tiger Reserve. I told you that the Tiger Reserve was first started as a project in order to protect the tigers. So out of these, now when I told you about Biosphere Reserve, I told you they always have the main aim of protection of the plants and animals. So the Panchmari Biosphere Reserve have some special flora and fauna which needs to be protected, and the reserves include sal and wine mango. They are all endemic species. The endemic fauna includes bison, Indian giant squirrel, and the flying squirrel. So the endemic flora is the wild mango and the sal, whereas the endemic fauna is the bison, Indian giant squirrel, and the flying squirrel. So these are the part of the Panchmari Biosphere Reserve which needs to be preserved, and they are preserved in that particular area. Next, we move on to the national parks. The national parks, they are also protected areas intended to provide a natural habitat with all the natural resources to the animals where they can freely roam and use the habitat. These areas are extended and diverse enough to protect the entire ecosystem, including the flora, fauna, historic objects, and the natural landscapes. So in the previous Biosphere Reserve, when we were talking of, I told you that even in Biosphere Reserve, we have some portions if the tribals, there is some particular tribals or particular people, tribal people or population, those who are there, even they are tried to be restored. In national parks, it is not like that. There is no such tribal population, but the flora, the fauna, the habitat is preserved as it is. It is preserved as it is. Not only the flora and fauna, even sometimes the landscapes are also preserved. Supposedly there is a kind of a particular lake, or there is a kind of a particular rock, there is a kind of a particular cave that also gets preserved in the national parks, along with that of the animals, plants along the natural habitat. So it is not as huge as a Biosphere Reserve. It is on a smaller scale, and it does not have those three zones, the core, the buffer, and the manipulation, like that of the Biosphere Reserve. So some of the examples of the national parks are the Jim Corbett National Park, Manans National Park, Kanha National Park, Gir National Park, and the Kaziranga National Park in Assam. So this is about the national parks. The wildlife sanctuary, it is an area where the animals and habitats and the surroundings are protected from any sort of disturbance. So they are maintained in the natural habitat, and they are actually protected from capturing, killing, poaching, hunting by any of the human beings. Like even in national park also this is done, because in national park people are not allowed to enter easily. Whereas in wildlife sanctuary, you are allowed to enter, but these activities are not allowed. Even wildlife sanctuary is not as huge as a national park. And finally is the Tiger Reserve. Satpura Tiger Reserve is a project which was launched by the government in order to protect tigers in the country in 1973 in order to protect tigers. A tiger reserve consists of a core or critical tiger habitat which is to be managed as an inviolate area. Inviolate area. So what I told you, a tiger reserve obviously have to have a core area where the tigers need to be preserved in their habitat, and that area is obviously not allowed for anyone, because there the tigers are maintained and they are allowed to live and grow. So that area is totally inevitable, or it is not, no one can violate or step into that area, because it is done specially in order for the maintenance of the tigers. So this is about the wildlife sanctuary, the national park, the Biosphere Reserve, and the Tiger Reserve. Now this is a wildlife sanctuary where no capturing, poaching, hunting is allowed. This is a national park where flora, fauna, along with the historical objects like any caves or any temple or any particular lake that is preserved. And this is a Biosphere Reserve. It may contain any protected area in it, because a Biosphere Reserve has three particular zones, that is the core zone, the buffer zone, and the manipulate zone. Now this is the difference between a wildlife sanctuary and a national park. Human activities like grazing, cultivation, tourist activities are allowed in a wildlife sanctuary, whereas in a national park no interference is allowed. The main aim is to protect a particular flora or fauna. National parks can include flora, fauna of any objects that are of historical or cultural significance. Here a particular flora or the fauna is targeted for a Biosphere Reserve, but in a national park any sort of flora and fauna which needs to be protected or which is of importance is protected in the particular national park. There are no boundaries fixed here. The boundaries are very much fixed and defined, because I told you this is a huge area, and the outside area is often used by the people for cultivation, for grazing, for even settlement also. So you can understand there is no boundary fixed for a Biosphere Reserve. Open to general public, this is not usually open to general public. Wildlife sanctuaries are formed by the order of central state government, national formed by the state and the central legislature. So both are under the legal hands, and it can be upgraded to a national park and it cannot be downgraded to a sanctuary. It can be upgraded to a national park, but here it cannot be downgraded to a wildlife sanctuary because national park is of a good or utmost importance in a particular region or a particular country. Next, moving to the in order or in relation to this biodiversity ecosystem, we have lots of new terms coming up which we need to understand, or how do we relate it to the conservation of plants and animals. So biodiversity is the flora and fauna. The preservation is the variety or the diversification of the plants and animals. So under biodiversity, there are some vulnerable species, endangered species, critically endangered species, and extinct species. So the first is vulnerable species. They are about to become endangered. They are about to become endangered, like the giant panda and the polar bear. Now, when it is endangered, what is endangered? Endangered, they are at the high risk of extinction. They are at a high risk of extinction. So the numbers of this particular species are actually reducing day by day. So they are to be taken very good care of, and they are to be maintained very good so that we can maintain those particular animals, like that of the Bengal tiger. And critically endangered species that are at a very high risk of extinction. It is more than that of the endangered. They are critically endangered. 90% of the population is already lost. Here in endangered, around 80% is already lost. So this is still more important, or it is still to be taken care of more, because the numbers are very fast reducing. Example, that of the Philippine eagle and the red wolf. So this is a Philippine eagle and a red wolf. And extinct, these we have already lost the species. These particular animals or birds or plants, they are no more with us. We have not seen them. So species that not located in the wild in the last 50 years is textually called as extinct, like that of the dinosaurs or the dodo bird. Moving on to the next one, that is the species. We have talked about species so much. What is species? So species is a group of living organisms consisting of similar type of individuals which are capable of exchanging, or which are capable of interbreeding. They are capable of interbreeding among themselves. Now, what are endemic species? Those that are restricted to a particular geographical area. And they do not occur in any other part of the world, like that of the Asiatic lion, which is found in the Gir National Forest. Next is the ecosystem. What we understand by ecosystem, it is the total biotic and abiotic factors together from the ecosystem. Biotic factors means the plants, the animals and microorganisms and all the living organs. Whereas the abiotic means the land, water, air, sunlight, temperature, rain, everything together called the ecosystem. A geographic area where plants, animals, other organisms as well as the weather landscape work together to form an ecosystem. This is a kind of an ecosystem. And food chain. A food chain is a linear network of starting with the producer to finally the decomposer or the highest predator, which exists at the top of the food chain. So it starts with the producer, forms from that is a grasshopper, a mouse, a snake, a vulture, and it goes on back to the producers. So this is a food chain starting with the producers, ending up with the highest predator or that of the decomposer species. And finally, this completes, or this gives us the what happens in a biodiversity. What happens in a biodiversity where is diversification of plants and animals. So we have understood what are vulnerable species, what are endangered species, what are critically endangered species, and finally what are extinct species. And we have also learned what are species, what is an ecosystem, what is a food chain, and what are endemic species. Now let's move on to some terms that is very important in this term of conservation of plants and animals. That is, first is Red Data Book. We have heard this many times, Red Data Book. So it is a source book that maintains international list of all endangered and plant and animal species. It helps us in providing a complete information on the research, studies, monitoring programs that are being done for those endangered species or animals or plants. Migration, that is to move from one place to another. It is move into or come to live in a region or community, especially as a part of a large scale and continuing movement of population. So movement of population from one to another. That is, we call up the migratory birds. They fly from the Siberia to some part of the earth where the temperature is suitable enough for them to continue their life during the winter months. So that is called the migration, a total movement of the population. And finally is reforestation. The term you can understand, reforestation means planting of more trees. Wherever trees have been cut off, trees have been removed due to the process of urbanization, due to the process of deforestation, again planting of trees. So it is the act of planting trees, seeds or young trees in an area where they are being used to be a forest. So this brings us to the end of the chapter, conservation of plants and animals. So if you have liked my video, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. I request you, please subscribe to my channel if you are liking the videos that I keep on posting on my channel, and if you find them informative. If you have any questions, if you have any doubts regarding any chapters, please feel free to put in the comment section. I'll surely get back to you. Till then, signing off for now. Stay safe, stay happy, and wish you all a very happy Dasera. Enjoy life, and yes, please come back and see my channel and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.